is a great technique because it's really easily accessible and it's completely random. You're going to get the best results by just kind of embracing the randomness of the process. These are a couple of examples of some ones that I've done. A few things to know to get started with this. This will be quite messy. When I switch over to my document camera, you'll see in front of me that I have some paper set out on the table in front of me. I highly recommend having something underneath of your workspace that is easy to clean up or that is easy to throw away. Secondly, in addition to the materials that were distributed by St. Mary's County Library, you'll also need a cup. I recommend a clear cup so that you can see the colors when they're going in, and you'll need something to mix those items with. I like to use Q-tips. You can use a fork and a plastic knife, anything to mix with and kind of get all of that paint out of there. How I'm going to kind of structure this is I will go through and show all of the whole instructions first really quickly, and you guys can just sit back and watch. After I do that once quickly, we'll go ahead and we'll get our materials together, and then we'll do it again step by step, and I'll pause after each step for any questions. Does anybody have any questions so far? If you do, go ahead and speak up. All right, if there's no questions, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my document camera. Hang tight for me. And again, I'm just going to go through this really quickly first, so you guys can just watch for now. So I have a couple of materials here.
We do have one quick question. Just what size cup?
What size cup? Great question. So the smaller, the better. It essentially will be putting 3 cups worth of liquid into that cup. So something small like this, kind of like the size of a can, would be best. You can use a bigger cup, but it will make it a little bit more complicated. So like an 8-ounce cup would be best. Great question. All right. And so you can see I have all of my stuff kind of set up on this paper just in case. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to mix our fluid medium with our paint. So we have 3 colors of paint, and we have this stuff called Floetrol. This is a pouring medium that you can actually buy at Home Depot for very cheap. And that's why I like it as a pouring medium, because as a teacher, I like to buy the cheap stuff. And it actually works really well. You can also use things like Elmer's glue as a fluid medium, but that gets a little bit pricier. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mix these together. I'm going to add as much of the Floetrol as I can to these cups without overflowing them. And I'm going to go ahead and shut this because I am going to use this cup later for drying. Once I've poured those in, mix up each color like so. And while I'm doing this, I really want to make sure that this color is really well mixed. So as you can see here, it's not quite well mixed yet. It's still got a couple of chunks in it. One thing that you don't want to do, some people have asked me if they can do this instead, is close the cup and shake it. It's much better to mix than to close the cup and shake, simply because that will add bubbles into the mixture. The more bubbles that are in the mixture, the more bubbles will be on the canvas later. The texture or the viscosity that we're looking for here is kind of like warm honey or heavy cream. It's going to be fairly liquid, probably a little bit more liquid than many of us are used to when using paint. And last color here. Now what the Floetrol does is it prevents the colors from kind of mixing once you put them together. It kind of keeps those colors separated until they go on the canvas. Oh, great question. So hang on one second until we're done with this first quick demo, because I'm just going to go really fast with this. And if you have a lot less paint in your cup, you'll still use the same amount of Floetrol. Excellent question. So the Floetrol ratios are just kind of recommended. They're not hard set. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. Once I've got these together, I'm just going to pour a few drops of the silicone oil in. The silicone oil is what gives the paint its cells. The cells are kind of like the spots on the finished product that kind of open up and show those different colors. And I'm just going to mix those a few times like this. Now, for the last step and the most dramatic step, what we're doing is I'm going to do something called a flip cup pour for this one. And I'll show you guys how to do a flip cup pour, dirty pour, clean pour, and a tree ring pour when we go into ours. But for now, I'll just show you this first one. We're gonna pour our paint into the cup, kind of alternating colors as we go. And now this is the tricky part. I'm going to take my canvas with my hand like this, and I'm going to put it over top of my cup, flip it upside down, and just let the paint run down. I'm just going to let it sit there for a second. All that paint is going to run down. And then when I lift it up, that paint will start spreading around the canvas. Now, this is the patient part where we kind of like take a little bit of time to move that canvas around like so. And kind of just let gravity work on it. And you'll see as the colors kind of start spreading, you'll see those cells kind of come out. There's little bits of color that start to shine through. And oh, I see some other questions in the chat. Hang on, I will grab those in 1 second. And so I'll go ahead and set this to the side for now, because that was just our real quick run through demo. All right, let me check the chat real quick. All right, so 2 Floetrol cups, yes. So let's go ahead and grab all our materials, and we'll go through this step by step together. So go ahead and set all of your stuff out. Your silicone oil, your Floetrol cups, and your paint cups.
And I think 1 or 2 people just need a moment while they go and grab a cup.
Gotcha, no problem. Excellent question in the chat. The cup that has the Floetrol on it and the cup of white stuff that does not have the Floetrol label, those are both Floetrol. Great question. All right, is everybody ready, or are we still waiting to grab some materials? If you guys could give me a thumbs up if you are ready to go. I don't want to start until everybody is ready. Awesome. All right. So again, you have these 2 white cups of Floetrol, and we're going to try and distribute them between our 3 colors of paint. Now you'll see if you take a look at some directions for this online, you'll see kind of like some ratios that are given for combining the Floetrol with the paint. One of the most common ones is 2 to 1, but the ratios really, really vary depending on things like humidity. It's kind of like baking bread. If it's more humid, you might need less. If it's less humid, you might need more. So what I've done is I've just structured it so that use as much of the Floetrol as you can in all of these cups. I like to just start by pouring some into each one, letting that sit upside down for a second, and then pour the remaining 2. If you're using something like a spoon, or like I'm using for Q-tips, you can go ahead and kind of scrape those last little dregs out. Because again, the goal for this is for our paint to kind of be the viscosity or the texture of warm honey or heavy cream. Want it thicker than water, but thinner than mashed potatoes. And I've had people ask me this in the past, if you can combine the silicone oil before you mix the paint. And there's a reason that we save the silicone oil for after we've already mixed, because if we put it in too soon, it'll bond really quickly with the Floetrol rather than the paint particles, which is what we want it to do. All right. So I'm going to give everybody just a few more minutes to keep working on that one step. While we do that, I'd like to go back to that one question before about if we have less paint in the cup, if we should still use the same amount. And the reason why there's so little paint in this cup is because what we're using for paint is we're using something called Liquitex heavy body paint. And that paint has a lot more pigment and a lot less binder in it. If you want to do this again in the future and you want to buy some of the less expensive paints that are at Michael's, like Craft Smart, or something that's already really liquid like this, you can absolutely do that. It will still work. You'll just use less Floetrol. You'll use less of that binder. And so you can kind of see here, it's a little bit hard to see with the light, but you can kind of see that texture. It's almost like warm honey. So that's the texture you're going for. If yours still looks really, really thick, let me know. And you can hold it up to the camera and I can take a look if you're concerned about the texture.
Okay, so we had a question from Christy. We have 2 Floetrol cups. Should we use it all in mixing with the colors?
Yes, use all of that Floetrol as much as you can. And again, I'm going to snap the lids back on both of those when I'm done, because we're going to use those to put our canvas on once we have spread out all our paint. And if you have mixed up all of your colors, you can go ahead and take your silicone oil. You'll kind of see it bead up on the top. Kind of see that shiny little bit. And again, use all of the silicone oil, just distribute it amongst the 3 cups. And then again, lid back on those because we will use those later. Once your silicone oil is in, go ahead and mix it up. You'll see it kind of it almost looks like you're making like a salad dressing, like you're mixing oil and water, because that is kind of what you're doing. But eventually it should start to distribute. If you still see those streaks of oil, just keep gently stirring. All right, I'm just checking in. I see most people have stopped stirring. Does anybody need a moment to continue working on their colors? Please indicate either in the chat or raising your hand. Just let me know if you need some more time. Okay, I see some people need some more time. So we'll go ahead and wait a few more minutes on that. While we're waiting, if you are done mixing yours, the silicone oil is on the blue lid. It's a silicone pouring oil. Oh, in general, you can get it. So I get this stuff, silicone pouring oil. I get it off of Amazon or at Michael's. The most frequently used brand is called treadmill oil, but I buy the cheap stuff, which works just as well for me. And this brand is Pouring Masters. But there are a lot of different brands. You can find them on Amazon, Michael's, AC Moore. Oh, I don't know if AC Moore exists anymore. But a lot of craft stores will have them now, and they'll be in the paint section with the acrylics. All right, and while everybody is still stirring, I'll bring back the first little demo that I did. So that was the flip cup demo. So like I said, I would show you 4 different things. So if you want kind of those cells, those circular spots that kind of spread out with another color within another color, that flip cup technique is going to be something that you want to do. For this next step, if you think you might want to try a couple of techniques, you won't pour all of your colors into this cup yet. So hang tight while I show those techniques once everybody's ready, so that you can make an informed decision about how you want yours to look. And just checking in one more time, do we still need time to mix, or are we ready for our next step? If you still need time to mix, let me know in the chat or raising your hand or unmiking and letting me know. All right. So like I said, for our next step, we'll be pouring into this cup, which is going to be our mixing cup. Don't do that yet, because I do want to show you the 4 techniques. So I showed you that flip cup pour. A dirty pour is when you have a bunch of stuff left over at the bottom. Let me bring my light over here. There's a bunch of this stuff left over at the bottom. That is simply where I take that and I let it flow out. It's already kind of mixed, and let that flow on the canvas. And like my dad used to say when I fell down the stairs, tilt it one way, gravity works. And you'll kind of see that. Let me see if I get my other side of the document camera. You'll start to see it kind of flowing down. You want to spread it out as much as possible. Sometimes shaking the canvas will help. The other thing that you can do is something called a clean pour, which is, you can see I've left some of the colors in my cup here, and you can simply pour those colors separated out on the canvas. This provides a little bit more of more control. You're able to decide where you want those colors to be and kind of create a composition. And then again, once you do that, you do want to tilt it and let gravity work, because that's how you get those really cool patterns. This is the part that actually takes the longest. It's just kind of waiting for all of that paint to seep down. And then that last technique that I mentioned is called tree ring. And you might be kind of intuitive, but it's where you take one color, you pour a drop, you take another color, pour a drop in the center, and then another color, pour a drop in the center, and so on and so forth. And so that kind of makes that tree ring shape. All right, so once you have all your colors mixed, you're going to decide how you want to do it. If you want to do the flip cup, which I really recommend trying, then you'll go ahead and take your cup, and I'm just going to go ahead and put my old colors, or my new colors, back on my old colors. Let me try and adjust my lamp here really quick. There we go. So I'm going to take these old colors and I'm going to pour them in just a little bit at a time. And I'm going to alternate colors. If you want to try the other techniques as well, you're going to want to leave a little bit of extra stuff in your cup here. But if you want to just do the flip cup technique, you'll pour all of those colors in. And I'll just pause here for a second. All right, and unless people need some more time for this step, I'm going to go ahead and demo that flip cup technique again. Please let me know if you want me to pause at this point, if you need a little bit more time. In the chat, I see somebody said they lost their connection. What was the last thing you were able to see on the screen? If you could tell me that, then I can summarize for you. Okay, so if your cup looks like this, you haven't missed anything at all. We are just going to now do that flip cup technique. So we're going to put our canvas on top of our cup, back of the canvas facing our hand, front of the canvas facing the top of the cup, and really, really quickly flip it over and try and get all of that paint to drop down. Now we're just going to wait a second. If you have a clear cup, this is why I highly recommend a clear cup, because you can kind of watch those colors come down and see when the bulk of them are down. I usually give it about a minute. And then some people will poke holes in the top of their cup to release that, but I prefer to just pick that cup up. And then you'll see that paint starting to spread. Then just gently tilt your canvas around and around. As you tilt the canvas, you'll start to see all of those cells appear. You'll start to see some kind of like interesting shapes. Once you get kind of to the corner, turn it again and try and cover as much of the canvas as you can. If you find that your paint's moving really slowly, go ahead and tap the back of your canvas a little bit. Not too hard, but you'll kind of hear that drumming noise, and that'll move the paint along a little bit faster. Now, oftentimes you'll find that the edges of the canvas won't get covered very quickly. Like my paint is still flowing, but it's not flowing very fast. So that's where I can take the leftovers that are at the bottom of this cup, and I can kind of do, again, what's called a dirty pour. Just around all of the places that don't currently have paint. And I can use a Q-tip to kind of get those out if I want to. And then tilt. And now something that I also like to do sometimes, and this is a really good example. This is a finished one that I did a while ago. If you find that one area of your canvas has a lot of one particular color on it, like right here, I found that one had a lot of teal and there wasn't as much black, then you can just take one of those extra little bits of color that you have, and you can pour it on one area, add another one. Like we talked about, that's called a clean pour. And so if I want that area of the canvas to have a little bit more brightness, I can do a clean pour just to add that one particular color. And I can even do a dirty pour on top, and that'll move the liquid around a little bit. You will find that this will start spilling over to the edges. And you can do one of two things with that. You can let it run naturally and have natural edges, or you can take a paintbrush or a finger or a Kleenex or paper towel, and you can kind of wipe along the side of the edge. And then later on, you can go back and touch that up with some white paint, or you can just kind of leave it be. Two options there. The more paint that you leave on the side of the canvas, though, the longer it will take to dry. So just do keep that in mind. And I'm gonna do one last demo of that tree ring pour up in the corner here. That's where we take one color. Oops, I accidentally got a little bit right there. But like Bob Ross says, no mistakes, only happy accidents. Paint pouring is a great way to do happy accidents. There we go. And now I've got all four of those techniques on my board. Just gonna scrape down the side there. There we go. And do a little bit more of a dirty pour to get these corners. And tilt. All right, now, if you are still working on tilting yours, no worries at all. But I do want to mention, because I see some people have stopped tilting. So when we let these dry, it's really, really important to let them dry evenly on both sides. And what I mean by that is, I mean that the underside of the canvas is currently really, really saturated with all the water from that paint. And what happens if you let it dry where it's just sitting on a table like this is something called, some people call it crackling, because it kind of looks like, it almost looks like bacon in a pan. It will start to kind of form these weird textures, these weird kind of crusty textures. Because what's happening is the paint on top is drying faster than the paint on the bottom, because there's a pretty thick amount of paint on here. So why I mentioned that you wanted to save your pouring cups or your silicone pouring oil in your Floetrol cups is because the easiest way to solve this problem to prevent that from happening is by having it dry on top of something so that the air can flow underneath. So what I like to do is just put those 2 cups wherever I was working, or those 3 cups rather, one on each corner at the top and then one at the bottom. And now I think Jessica mentioned in the materials that were distributed that this will take about 24 hours to dry. And I don't know about St. Mary's County right now, but where I live in Laurel, it is very humid today. So this, this example is one that I made yesterday. I made it about 24 hours ago, and it is still kind of a little bit damp to the touch. If you accidentally touch it, and I use this as an example of what happens when you accidentally touch it before it is dry, it will have some super funky textures to it. So if that's something you're interested in, you could definitely play around with that. But if you want to keep this smooth, clean texture, do avoid touching it for 24 hours. So you want to set this up in a place where it won't be bothered by pets or kids or other hapless members of the household. I grew up in a house with 5 younger brothers and sisters. And so if you are in the similar boat, maybe not near those people. So you can see right now that it's really, really shiny, and that's just kind of incidental right now because it's still wet. It will keep a little bit of its shine, but if you want it to be super, super shiny, you can do one of 2 things. You can buy gloss Mod Podge and put it over top, or, and I think this one looks a little bit better, you can buy spray varnish, and you can just get that at the Home Depot. Jessica mentioned that she'd include my email in a link at the end. You can email me for links to any of these things, or for questions or comments or concerns. But if you spray it with that, that spray varnish, it'll be super, super shiny, and it'll keep that kind of sheen to it. Some people will take a heat gun to prevent the bubbles from forming, but fortunately our Floetrol is pretty good at preventing those super, super big pockmarky bubbles from forming, which is one reason why I choose that as a medium. So I'm going to switch back over to my regular document camera, or my regular camera, not my document camera, so we can stop listening to a disembodied voice. And if you have questions or concerns about how yours is turning out, please feel free to speak up now. We have about 5 minutes left. And if you don't have questions or concerns, but you'd like to show off your work, I also welcome that. I would love to see your guys' stuff.
Hi, this is Jessica. I had a question. So I know we used 3 different colors of paint. Could you talk a little about, does it always have to be 3 colors? How do the colors affect each other?
Great question. Thank you, Jessica. So I have done this project with a wide variety of people. I've done this with children as young as 7, and I've done this with adults. And my favorite time that I did this was with a group of middle school girls. We bought a big 48 pack of paint, and we did this for somebody's birthday party, and they used so many colors. They mixed up, I think one of them had about 24 colors mixed together. And it's a great thing to experiment with. You can use as many colors as you want. And the bigger the canvas, the more fluid obviously you will need. However, I do recommend starting off with a minimal amount of colors, because the more colors you mix, the more unexpected color mixing combinations you're going to get. What I like to do is I like to start off with a warm color, a cool color, and a neutral color. So a warm color would be something like reds, oranges, or yellows, like this. A cool color would be greens, blues, or purples, like this. And a neutral color would be something like black, beige, brown, or tan, like this. And there are definitely other, like kind of borderline colors, like pink can be a warm or a cool color. So that can be a great one to like add in as a fourth color, but those are the colors that I like to choose because I think they make the most interesting mixes. But that's a personal thing.
Cool, thank you.